Mario Salazar, I don't, oh, there he is, our vice chair, and was not at all willing to say anything except we're going to do this. So candidates, this is your guy. He's the one that said we need to get them all here. I think he had been talking with several of you individually, and finally we said let's just have a forum. And we have a saying here that Manatee matters. So we're glad you're here, and we appreciate the interest. I always say also that we can't have an event like this without thanking a group of people who are willing to put themselves out to do something to better the party and to better things for all of us. I was going to say you're in Bradenton, Florida, just in case you don't know where you are. I've been following you. I know that you've been in different places, but with the weather outside, I can't even convince you that you're in Bradenton, Florida. I don't think this is where we are. So. Randy Sathan is going to be participating in the program with us as well. Randy is our precinct development coordinator. She has been doing great work, and she has great aspirations. Our newly elected state committee man, Sean Leho, we understand is on the way. Sean works 2 different jobs at very different schedules, so we are hoping that he will be here quickly. Cornell Maxfield, our newly elected state committee woman, is also on the state Democratic Black Caucus, so she is in Orlando right now, doing some of the same work. We saw her. Oh, you saw her. All right, very good, very good. As I said, you make the rounds. We do have state committee people here from adjoining counties. We have the chair of the Sarasota County Democratic Party. You want to introduce your team? Who's with you?
Thank you. So happy to be here, and thank you for all the hard work that all of you did during the election. I know Manatee County, Charlotte County, and everyone worked as hard as Sarasota County did, and we thank you so much. My team is here, or a good part of it. Mike Schlasko is the new state committee man. Stand up, say hello, wave. Mary Flucker, she's the new state committee woman. And she's also the president of the Democratic Club of Sarasota. Great club, awesome. Barbara Katz is the new treasurer. And Kevin Griffith, the vice chair, I didn't see him walk in, but he's on his way. So that's my team. We're so excited. We're excited to work with you guys again. We always look for ways to collaborate with Manatee County.
Okay, and Charlotte County. I know I spoke to you when you came in. Where's our Charlotte County? Well, here they are. We sent them to lunch. Would you guys like to introduce yourselves and say who you have with you?
Well, we have Nancy Vasa. She is the chair of the Charlotte County Democratic Club.
That's what she is.
There was another one, but there was some illness situation at the last minute. You have my husband here. He has become the Charlotte County State Committee man. And you have Lucy Barner, whose house I have become the State Committee man. Our chair is not here because he's a young man and he has Boy Scout responsibilities in Daytona Beach. Okay? So we continue the, coordinating here with the other surrounding county, and we did well getting votes, but we didn't get our hero in charge of the country. So we need to wait, but we are ready to work toward getting elected our chair. Thank you very much.
You got a congressman. You got a congressman.
And Pinellas. Where are our Pinellas? Would you like to stand up and introduce your group?
I'm Wanda Shore. I'm the state committee woman in Pinellas County. This is Bill Piccolo.
I'm with the Environmental Caucus.
President of Americas in the state chapter.
Don't be shy. He'll found the Democratic Environmental Caucus.
And Lisa, I understand you have the Duval State Committee man with you.
I do. This is my husband, John Parker. He's the Duval County State Committee.
And Lisa is the state committee woman.
Yes. We're wear multiple hats here, okay. And then we also just, for your benefit and the benefit of everyone's here, knowing that we do have a lot of our Manatee volunteers here. Catherine is here. Here's our secretary. I saw you come in earlier, but that,
Yeah, it's not good.
yeah. So let's say hello to her as well. But we have a lot of our Manatee County volunteers. A lot of them have been with us for many years. A lot of them came in through the election cycle. A lot of them, or some of them, have come in after the election cycle. So we have been, we find the lining in the cloud where we can, and we do have an inspired and fired up group. So we're going to exploit that and do some good work with it. So I don't know, has anyone heard from Mr. Battelle? Do we have word on him? He confirmed late last night, but what I think we will do is, he would be we were going to go in alphabetical order, but we will just reverse that and keep going. As I jokingly commented, we have been watching this process play out throughout the state, and I joked with my team that I was very tempted to get a popcorn popper and bring it in. And some reclining chairs maybe, and just watch the show. But in all seriousness, we do think that this has been a healthy process, and we wanted very much to be a part of it. We have struggled or talked with each other about what our format would be and how we might ask you a question that maybe you haven't answered 25 times before. So I don't know that we will be able to do that in all cases, but maybe we can approach it a bit differently. What we had planned to do today is to ask each of you to introduce yourself, and you will notice we put some notes for you. There are very specific things that we would like to hear from you as you introduce yourself. We are thinking that we will take about 3 minutes per person to do that, and as long as you answer the questions, you can expand or constrict as you wish. Gloria Carme, hold your hand. We'll be casually keeping time for you. We're not going to stop you in mid-sentence or mid-thought, but Gloria will raise her hand a few seconds before they are approaching the 3-minute mark, and then we will go. Then we're going to divide our questioning or our discussion into 3 topics. I am going to be introducing some questions for comment and conversation on just the organization, on how we organize, what we are looking toward with the state party. Randy Sathan, who I mentioned is our precinct development person, will be asking questions having to do with how the state chair and the state party will be working with us at a local level. And then Eleuterio, who is a past and future Democratic candidate, will be leading some questions or coming to you with some questions about how we can work to develop our Democratic candidates on the local level. Those of you who are state committeemen and state committeewomen who will be voting in this election next week, if you have a question that we don't address, we will try to, again, moving with time, we will try to give you an opportunity to ask anything outstanding that doesn't get covered in these. And we did have some index cards. If any of you here in the audience have questions that you want to make sure we address, if you will write those questions down and bring them over or send them over to this desk, we will try to incorporate those topics, make sure that we touch on everything. Does that work with the 4 of you? And then, depending on time, we may give you a minute or 2 to sum up. But we will just kind of see how that goes from there. Are the cards still on the back desk back there? We will distribute them. Okay. Can anyone think of anything we haven't covered? Any questions that the 4 of you might have? Here are cards. We'll just... Pardon? Oh, okay. Yes. Other than your introductory, when you're introducing yourself, we will again go in a rotating. We'll start at the end of the table. We will ask the first question to Dwight, and Dwight will have 2 minutes to talk about that question. Then each of the rest of you will have a minute to weigh in, to agree, to disagree, to embellish, to say, no, we don't like that part. Again, we're not going to be really strict on that, but we'll try to do that. And then the next question, we'll start with Leah, and you will get the 2 minutes, and then we'll rotate through. If there's a topic that seems to be generating a lot of interest, we will just stop and expand that topic. But that's kind of it.
You've obviously paid attention to how much we agree on things, so that
We have.
That's something.
And I hope that we address that a little bit. I think we'll go on and begin. And Mr. Patel gets here, then we will be able to bring him up to speed, I think, and go. But again, I am going to start the questioning, and then I'm going to sit down, and you won't have to listen to me anymore. But my first question, I'm going to need my notes because I have some words here. I have a 17-year-old granddaughter that likes to think of herself as a techno person. So I asked her to look at your statements, the printed or the online positions that you have, listen to some of the videos that we have of you, and tell me, since there are 5 candidates, I said, please find for me the 5 words that show up the most in these comments, in these positions. I think you might find them interesting. Huh?
She did word cloud.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm moving right along. I wanted to take over. We didn't do intros. Well, you all didn't notice that,
We've heard
did
them
you?
so often that we're ready
Yeah,
to
we
skip
should,
it.
that's the challenge. We should be introduced to the person sitting next to us.
We had it formatted a particular way, that's why I wanted it.
Yes. And you know what? I'm going to allow Dwight to start that process, and I'm going to go look at our temperature in the back. See what we can do. So Dwight, if you have your information there on what we want to hear from you.
State Senator Dwight Bullard, former state senator at this point, but I do get to keep the title along with the lavish salary that a state senator. My current position in the Democratic Party is I'm the state committeeman from Gaston County. For those of you familiar with the geography of our fine state, that is the county closest to Leon, which is where the state capital is, so it's just west of Leon County. And actually the county with the largest concentration, although being a small county, largest concentration of Democrats. So I'm proud to represent that. By profession, I'm a public school teacher, and as I stated in the title, former state legislature, member of the state legislature, served in both the House and the Senate. Qualifications for the chair position. I like to say that I've kind of touched every facet of the democratic process, and what I mean by that is the first campaign that I ever worked on was 1984 when I was all of 7 years old, and it was a state house candidacy where I'm sitting there toting the sign on the back of a fire truck, an old school fire truck that as we're going around ringing the bell, going door to door. So I understand the nature of retail politics, probably more so than any other 7-year-old could have been at the time. As I've accumulated tenure over the next 30 plus years, I've been able to hold office, as I mentioned before, in both the House and the Senate. Been able to, of course, touch the lives of over almost 2,000 students here as a public school teacher over the course of the last 17 years, and served 2 years as a local DEC chair. So I know all too well the trials and tribulations of running a local DEC. My motivation for seeking the position, I think all of us felt the same sense of angst, frustration, and anguish November 8th, and we also understood that we're at a low point, unfortunately, as a party. Not only do we have to rebuild our own infrastructure, but we have to restore faith and confidence in the brand that is the Democratic Party, especially the Democratic Party in the state of Florida, which, let's be honest, most folks think is becoming less and less relevant. And so my ultimate goal as party chair is to restore that faith and confidence and to bring a sense of relevance back to the process. Now, I know that it's a painstaking task, especially over a 4-year period, because ultimately our litmus test is going to be to win elections. But I think the work begins on January 15th, right after one of us takes office, that we now have to begin the painstaking process of making sure that we get in front of our local DECs and understand that you're going to have an absolute advocate for the things that we care about at the, is that the timekeeping thing? Oh, that's stop. I didn't know what the timekeeping process was.
It's been 3 minutes, so you might want to
Oh.
sum up.
Sorry. And so that's just it. I want to be the party's #1 cheerleader. And that's really the statement that I want to send to you all is that at the end of the day, I understand that the necessity of bottom up is critically important. So thank you so for being here and listening to what we have to say.
Well, again, thank you for us being here. My name is Leah Carius, and I am the chair of our Osceola County DEC. That is the county just south of Orange, Orlando. And we may be hidden, but we are bright blue. And we have a large Democratic population in our county, and we have now brought our county from decades of rule from the Republicans, and now we sit in the majority on all of our seats. And so that is my current position of the Democratic Party now. And my profession is, I say that I'm a stay-at-home mom. My husband calls me a professional volunteer. And I have, my husband and I were blessed with triplet boys. And they're 17 years old now, bigger than me, and about to leave home. And so all this timing worked out perfectly for me and my family when this opportunity came along. This is where I wanted to bring the changes that we've made in Osceola to the state party. And family-wise, the timing was perfect. My boys are independent and don't need their mom doting over them as much as they have now. So my qualifications for chair is team building, inclusion, building coalitions, and especially consensus building. And I think that I've gotten that experience from raising triplets, because I always say I can't get out the door unless I brought them to a consensus that we're all working on the same side. And that's what I'm known for as a leader. I invite everyone to the table with respect and listening ears, and give everyone being a part of the process. And my motivation for seeking this office was basically when I became chair of our county, I would call up to the state office for advice, for resources, 1,000,001 questions, and being turned away pretty much every single time. And the most disheartening of the messages is that when I first got elected, I went up there and said, okay, I've got some Democrats we elected, but once they got in office and they found the easy money and of the other party coming at them, they've been governing more as Republicans than Democrats. How can we help hold their feet to the fire on the values that they ran on? And dishearteningly, I was told, well, that's policy, and we don't do that. We are all about electing Ds, and once they get into the big towers, that's policy is their job, not ours. And that completely turned me away, because if we aren't defining what it means to be a Democrat, who is? And we seem to have forgotten that message. The state party should be defining what it means to be a Floridian Democrat, with that big umbrella and the common message, so that each county can adopt what's relevant to them. And that's what I want to run. Okay, and that would of course be my first action, and to get that message out there, as well as the hiring, the staffing I'll do once I'm lucky enough to get the position. And I think that'll be it.
I'm in trouble because I always speak longer than Leah, and she ran out of time. So I'm
I'm
in,
trying to use my time.
first, I also have to talk faster. I'm going to claim home field advantage because I'm actually a resident of Manatee County as well. I have a house in Manatee County that I spend a lot of weekends here. So home field advantage. I'm also claiming home field advantage to Sarasota because my daughters just spent the last year there, and I spend more time at the home goods store out of UTC and that Indian restaurant in that plaza than just about anywhere else. I love that Indian restaurant. Anyway, Alan Clendenin, I currently occupy, I'm the first vice chair of the Florida Democratic Party. You can throw stones and bananas and apples and everything now, tomatoes. I am a retired air traffic controller. I retired 4 years ago to actually, I took an early retirement specifically to seek the Florida Democratic Party chair position 4 years ago. This is something that I've been working towards for quite some time now. Qualifications for the chair position. A lifetime of Democratic activism. I was a union organizer. I have been a volunteer, only a volunteer. I've never been paid by the Democratic Party. I have never been a consultant. I've never been a vendor. I volunteered for my first campaign when I was 15 years old, and I volunteered for Jimmy Carter. I'm a Floridian. I grew up in Central Florida in Orlando, so I'm one of those rare folks that was born and raised here. I've occupied just about every volunteer position you can think of, from door knocking to telephone calls, to fundraising, to organizing. In full disclosure, since 2008, I was an active supporter of Secretary Clinton, and was very involved in the race in 2008 and again in 2016. In 2012, of course, after the primary in 2008, I was very involved in the president's campaign in Florida and again in 2012. And I did a lot of organizing and actually unification in 2008 after that race between the Hillary Clinton folks and President Barack Obama to bring the teams together to ultimately achieve victory in the state of Florida. Motivation for seeking office. Up until 2010, I was a true believer and a blind believer, and I just believed that everybody was a Democrat because of why I was a Democrat. Heartfelt conviction and values and all the things that we know about at least why I believe that, what the Democratic Party stands for. In 2010, I got really close to a state party race because I had supported my best friend to run for state house, the seat that Danny Young ultimately was elected into in 2010. That was Stacy Frank, who was also a resident of Manatee County. She's the one that convinced me to buy a house down here. Unfortunately, she passed away last July. So she was my best friend in the world. I was very involved in that race, and the curtain got pulled back to me on what was really happening in our party and who was making some of the decisions, and how and what was behind the decisions that were made. So what I tell folks all the time, the frustrations that you see, and everybody that points out problems says this is a problem, it's usually a symptom of the larger disease. And what that larger disease is the influence of consultants and vendors and the people that are actually making decisions on which candidates we support, the involvement in primaries, media buys, why we're ignoring some counties and paying attention to others, because there's the money behind these issues and these campaigns, and who's making money. I got so frustrated with that in 2010 I put a plan together of what a vision of an effective Florida Democratic Party would be. In 2012 I published another plan, and of course I fought a very hard-fought race to be state party chair. I missed it by that much, and all I can do is look back and think if I had been the chair, how things would have looked so substantially different than they are today. I'm a grassroots activist. Campaign 67 is been my moniker and what I've been promoting, grassroots activism, turning the party upside down, and I think I saw a hand that I'm out of time. I'm sure I'll be able to cover all of that later on, but thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Lisa King, and I'm the current state committee woman from Duval County, which is Jacksonville. Jacksonville is the smallest of the big counties, and we are proudly purple and trending blue. Professionally, I am Senior Vice President of Langton Consulting, and we provide grant consulting services to cities and counties, and so I've raised in my career millions and millions of dollars for cities and counties. The other qualifications for the chair, I've been involved in every facet of our party, and it's quite a litany, so I had to write it all down. I've been aide to a member of Congress and state representative. I've been a state officer in Young Democrats. I've been a member of my DEC from the precinct committee level on up. I rechartered my local Democratic Women's Club and was an officer for over 10 years. I've been a candidate for public office myself. I've been a local appointed official. I have been a 4-time delegate to the Democratic National Convention. I was North Florida lead for Hillary for America here in 2016, and I'm also the wife of a labor leader. So I've been involved in all facets from the party. I regard myself as a grassroots person, and I think that ultimately the Florida Democratic Party is a grassroots organization, and we need someone who understands the grassroots experience. My motivation for seeking this position is the continued brokenness and discontent that we feel within our own ranks because of the mistakes that were made this year by the DNC and by our campaigns. And you might say, well, as a Hillary person, how are you qualified to heal the party? Well, I put as my most important goal as we move through the primary season, partnering with friends of mine who are running Bernie Sanders' campaign in Jacksonville. And I defended and our first act was, let's kind of police the language of our own people. Let's keep this civil. Let's keep this within certain bounds of behavior. I got tested right out of the box when somebody from my team decided that my friend from the Sanders campaign shouldn't be running for YD president because she was a Sanders person, which was the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. It was very ugly to her. It all played out on Facebook. I defended her, and people really paid attention to that. We moved through that primary into delegate selection. I did training at Bernie headquarters for people who wanted to be delegates. We did questions and answers about being a delegate. I helped them with providing them a media consultant to help them get ready to deal with the press. And I made it clear to them I was never going to ask them to change their vote in Philadelphia because people had asked me to change my vote in 2008 when I was a delegate for Hillary, and I frankly didn't appreciate it very much. Senator Sanders had earned their slot, they had earned the right to represent them, and they should go and represent them. But what I wanted them to do was, after the convention, come back and join with me to help elect our nominee. And they all did, all 5. Even the one I was convinced was going to vote for Gary Johnson. And so that experience, when I announced that my run for chair, those bright young people were the first to amplify my message on Facebook and say, this is the kind of person we need to have to be chair at this time. So my motivation for seeking this position is that healing. We can't do all the things that we need to do, including moving to a bottom-up structure rather than a top-down structure, until we heal among ourselves first. My first action, if elected, would be to call the people who didn't vote for me and tell them that I need them to be involved in this party. We've had a tradition of people who, if you didn't vote for who was elected chair, that you're frozen out of committee work and leadership in the state party.
Right.
That needs to stop. And I think that if I'm elected, the message that my election would send is that we've learned from the mistakes that the Democratic Party made this year. Thank you.
Thank you all very much, and I think maybe I can put my questions aside, but we won't. We did have a comment in the back that if you, and I will give you the option, if you would like to stand when you speak, a couple of people in the back are struggling, so that's pretty much your call, but we'll go with that. And before I get into my topic questions, I just want to share with you and with everyone that I and several people in this room today came from another meeting at noon, which was the first planning and organizational session, a luncheon, for our big fundraiser gala, which we will be holding on April 21st this year. So I promised that group that the first question to these candidates would be, if you are elected, can we count on you to attend our gala?
Yes.
All right, that's what we want. That's good. Thank you very much. Okay, well now, I guess I can go to my topics.
There you go.
I kind of teased a bit that we have some of the words that have showed up most in your printed and online information. And I tried to mark as you were commenting today, and some of them did appear, some of them did not. Since there are 4 of you, I'm going to use the top 4. We'll limit the number to 4. And I think you can probably choose the word that you want to talk about. But let me tell you 4 of the top 5 words. Reform, inclusive, fix, grassroots. Now, allow me to be blunt. Those aren't new words. Those are words that any of us who have a political organizer mind or background have heard many, many cycles and many, many years. So I'm going to ask you to take one of those words and tell me how you're using it in your campaign and in your planning, or if you become chair, and how you interpret it or define it in 2017. And Dwight, you're the lucky guy that gets to start. And I think, Gloria, on this one, we'll do a minute all the way down.
A minute?
Yeah. We'll do
Oh,
it.
boy, okay. Oh, boy.
No pressure.
We're already behind.
I'm going to go ahead and choose inclusive. My commitment as FDP chair is that of inclusivity. I think we can all agree down the board, but I have the distinction of having fought literally on the front lines of many of these issues in the legislature that all of us care about. And I think part of how we begin the process of inclusivity is understanding that people have passion positions on certain things. And the activism that's kind of influenced us as Democrats when we were young has gone missing from the Florida Democratic Party for a long time. And it's, again, my commitment to kind of resuscitate the activist heart of the Democratic Party, because in the off season especially, it's those issues that are going to get people excited, get people motivated before the candidates decide to ride in on their respective white horses trying to motivate the party. And I think more importantly, it gives us a grounding and a litmus test for those candidates, because we would have spent months on end discussing and talking about those issues that we care most about. So I think that's important, inclusivity.
Great timing.
Okay, I'm gonna take the advantage of standing up because I've been drinking a long time now. Tired of being interviewed. And of course, I wanted inclusivity, and, but I think I'm gonna go with fix, because I think our state party is broken and it needs fixing. And because as someone who's been on the ground and been working in those positions and been knocking the doors and doing all the work that we all do, I was so frustrated by not getting that support and response and being ignored, because I'm in a medium-sized county. We are blue. They basically say, y'all don't seem to be broke, so you do what you're doing. You're doing a good job. And that was not the answer that we needed from the party. And so we just sort of turned to ourselves, and we created our own party platform for our county. And we hold our elected officials accountable to that platform. Are you governing the way you campaigned? And letting the voters know that. And so I think that all needs to be fixed and focus the state party down to the true experts of our party, which are our county DECs. We are, I believe, been neglected and overlooked, and they bring in experts and hire experts, and we're supposed to change all of our motives on the campaign trail, and I think we need to value our experts in our county.
Okay. I think if you ask everybody, they say, hey, Alan Clinton, he's the grassroots guy. So that's an easy one for me, and I am actually so much more, because I'm a grassroots guy, fundraiser, but I'll tackle the grassroots part, because that actually includes it's not just fix, but it's reinventing, really everything that we know about the Democratic Party. Right now, we're a top-down driven organization, totalitarian controlled by folks in Tallahassee that make decisions on Democratic Party politics that has little to do with why we all are in this room today and why we knock on doors and why we're such strong advocates for the candidates that we support.
That's right. So
My goal is to take this Democratic Party and flip it upside down. Go back and do exactly what I've already proven that I've been able to do. I was a union organizer. As an air traffic controller, I came into the air traffic control business after the president, I won't speak his name, decimated the air traffic control workforce and fired everyone. Within a very short period of time, I realized that, oh my God, that was a full minute. Oh my. Okay, I'm gonna cheat. Union organizer, grassroots organization, nationwide. I did it in air traffic control. I was an air traffic manager. I know how to do this. I'm a proven leader. Done it before. I'll do it again. I'll fix the dang party.
All right, I'm going to stand too, and I am going to pick the word inclusion also. because I look at inclusion a different way. I'm a process person. And I think the job of the chair of the FDP is to respect the process, respect the authority of the state committee people to make decisions on behalf of all of us, and also to respect the process by keeping out of primaries and not putting our thumb on the scale, and respect our voters. That's been a big problem. And I think inclusion also means making sure that our state committee looks like our voters, because it doesn't. There's been a lot of discussion of rules reform. I think part of that needs to be an affirmative action plan for our state committee. We do a great job of putting together our DNC slate to the Democratic National Convention of Delegates. We can do the same kind of job for our state committee. That's important because without that kind of inclusion, we have blinders on. We've got blind spots. We're missing stuff that's important in messaging and in strategy. So, and I think also a big part of inclusion is understanding that our job is year-round, and it's about community engagement. And especially in places like this, in red counties, it's about engaging with our voters on issues that aren't necessarily partisan, so that we can develop the kind of trusted advisor role and inclusion that they will then, when we say we're going to fix this community problem and you do it, then when they ask a question about health care, you can talk to them on the blue side and you will get their ear. Thank you.
I think we, again, have probably, in your introductions and in these comments, have touched on this next question, but it's the one that I really wanted to bring up. A man named Stephen Shale had an article online this week about where the Florida Democratic Party may or may not be headed and how they should move forward. And it received, and for those of you in the audience, Steve is a former FDP person. He is a former organizing for, or Obama for America person. He is a commentary extraordinaire. I consider him a political mentor, even though he's the age, I think, of my older son. Worked with him in the 2008 Obama campaign. So I do respect what he has to say. When I first read the article, I said, yes, Stephen is right on. And I began to see on social media, it was very quickly embraced by a lot of party leaders. But I have noticed in the last couple of days, there's begun to be some blowback on that article. I asked our membership for suggestions on the questions for this forum. And I got everything from where are you going to have the headquarters for the Florida Democratic Party to what are we going to do about Social Security and Medicare. So here's my question after my speech there. Do you agree or disagree? Elections are won and lost by candidates and campaigns. Do you agree or disagree, and tell us why? Well, you get to go first on that
one. Campaigns won and lost by candidates.
Our elections won and lost by candidates and campaigns.
Yes and no. I'm going to be both. I'm sorry. Yes, it does matter. Oftentimes the candidate themselves, are they able to reach to that voter and touch that voter? Is that what they're willing to put the work in that we know leads to a successful election? And campaigns, because I've seen how uneven our playing field is. Unfortunately in our party, it's been to be embraced by the party, you have to prove your viability as a candidate. And that means how much money can you raise? And that's their sole criteria. And that is not at all, I think, a successful criteria. We've proven in our county, you don't have to have big money to win elections. I ran for school board against a 3-term incumbent. I was known as the PTA mom. I was not known outside my immediate school zone. And he had 9 times the money I did. And he beat me by 152 votes. And because I used my money smarter, I had 2 television commercials with just $12,500 total campaign to his $92,000+. And if you spend wisely, you can reach more people. And if you're willing to do the work, you can reach more people. But I think our party, in its primary process, it picks their favorites, and it even picks their favorite races, and that's where the resources go. I think we need to level it out. If you're going to put yourself and your family out there to take that leap to run for office, you deserve the support and equal access to resources, experts, printing costs, everything, so that you can do it for less money and still get that message out there. And especially, and then after the fact, again, hold them accountable. Are they true to what they ran on? So that, did I go too long?
No, you're good.
I didn't look at you though. I didn't want to miss that. Thank you.
And now we will kick into where each of you can comment on her comments or add, agree, disagree for a minute.
One, the answer to that question is just Leah said is both, it's yes or no. But the reason why that is winning elections is a picture of a puzzle, and it's different pieces of a puzzle that you have to put together. Obviously, the candidates, everything that comes together, including party organization. And I will tell you, as far as leadership in a party organization, that's what I'm bringing. Again, I'm an air traffic manager, union organizer, someone who has been able to manage extremely complex organizations, manage budgets and procurement. But you also have to have good candidates in the races. Although our opposition, the Republican Party, has proven that you can have really cruddy candidates and still get them elected, a future occupant of the White House. But you know what? Again, what I bring is that I'll be an orchestra leader. So we're all going to have we have pieces of the orchestra. Everybody, our grassroots, our allied organizations, our incredible diverse community, we bring them all together, and as the Florida Democratic Party chair, I look at that role as I'm the person that makes all those little pieces of music come together to make an amazing song. And that's what it means to win an election. And I think that what you're going to find, and hello Stephen, I'm glad you could join us. I think what you're going to find in most everybody up here, you're going to hear a lot of the same. I think there's a general consensus that one, the Florida Democratic Party has proven itself to be not a functioning organization. The Democratic National Committee obviously had an epic failure in this particular cycle. But what I will tell you is over a period of time, it's not just this cycle. If you graph it out, even though we've had small little successes, overall the trend line has been down cycle after cycle after cycle. So even in those years like in 2008 and 2012 that we elected a president of the United States, we lost elections all over the state of Florida. We've been decimated in small counties. And for those of you that live in small counties, I know you know this. And even in those places that we had Democratic elected officials, they flipped on us because we weren't able to again convince them that we had a compelling message that would sell to voters. So that's one of the things I'm going to bring to the Florida Democratic Party as well. I'm going to be a face of this party along with an amazing team that we're going to put together to deliver a message about what it really means to be a Democrat. The values that we stand for and everything that we support. The environment, we all drink the water, we all breathe the air. We should be running on the environment, founder of the Environmental Caucus, and which I helped him found. Women's issues. The fact that we have these immigration issues in the state of Florida that we're having to deal with that are important to people's lives. So that's what I'm going to bring to the Florida Democratic Party, and I'll respect their time. Thank you.
So I have 1 minute, 2 minutes?
3 minutes.
3 minutes, okay.
I misspoke, I'm sorry.
It's okay. So, agree or disagree, are elections won and lost by candidates and campaigns? Well, the thing is, in the state of Florida, it's a 1% state, so everything matters, right? When you're working on that small of a margin, everything can make the difference. But when it works best, it is the work that we do as a party organization at the local level that matters. The reason that we are having such a difficult time in the state, and frankly the country, is that we've become dependent on a few big charismatic names to carry our banner. And that's not a sustainable strategy to build a political party. So unless we are empowering DECs and giving them the resources they need to build locally All of those big, wonderful candidates who carried our banner successfully are standing on quicksand because we're never going to be able to move the party forward. So we have to invest locally first. And that means retooling our DEC so that every precinct committee person is a field organizer and that they realize their job is year-round, working on community engagement, being involved in issues that are of local nature that may not be partisan at all, so that they are embedded in the community and trusted in the community and have authentic relationships in the community. A lot of times when we hear from groups that are our most loyal voters, they feel taken for granted. And because they feel like they only hear from the Florida Democratic Party 60, 90 days before the election, it's like, yeah, you're with us, right? And then we roll out of town. We, as DECs, have to be involved all the time. That's how you develop that kind of trust and authenticity. You're going to get better messaging because of that, because you're actually listening to people. And we know here at the local level, better than anybody, really what people need. Because right now, people don't think the Democratic Party cares about them. You know, if somebody's hungry, you don't give them a cookbook. You feed them. Okay? We have been, unfortunately, giving people cookbooks when what they want is a sandwich. So, I'm a candidate who strongly believes in our grassroots, that strongly believes in working from the bottom up, and I have shown that through my involvement in the party at all levels for decades. And I want to partner with all of our DECs, all of the kind of advocacy groups that have visions that align with ours to build that local infrastructure that we need so that there's no more quicksand for our candidates up the line. Thank you.
We'll go Dwight and then we'll give Mr. Patel a chance to introduce himself.
So being the fourth one to answer this question, you get a chance to sort of process. And it seems very atypical and easy to say yes or no, but I'm going to take a hard no. I'm going to tell you why. Candidacy, campaigns, irrelevant. At the end of the day, it's the person with the most votes who wins, yes? Can we all agree upon that? With the exception of the Electoral College, that's a whole other story, right? The challenge that I found as a DEC chair, that you all may find as DEC members, is we talk within this bubble, the confines of this room, and say, well, we're going to do everything we can to make sure our candidates get the best that they can. And then at the end of the day, we say, well, we weren't resourced properly by the state or the national level. Not understanding that, guess what, folks? Beyond these doors, beyond these walls, are the people that we are failing to interact with. We talk about marginalized communities, but let's be real. When's the last time we went to a place that didn't carry the DEC banner? Or more importantly, if we are in those spaces, if we are part of the League of Women Voters, if we are part of NOW, if we are part of church organizations or synagogues or mosques, or whatever the case may be, have we brought the message and principles of the Democratic Party to the forefront? And I can tell you, having campaigned for office, having won office, having not been the most resourced candidate in my race, that guess what? Your message, what you share, your core values, your ability to disseminate that information to people, for the ability to connect with somebody and you believe in them and them believe in you, is ultimately what's going to deliver more votes than the next person. It seems tumultuous, and a lot of us become sort of caught up in the concept that, well, if we had enough money, we could execute the message. But that goes away from the person you have sitting right on that wall. Lawton Childs did not believe in this concept of, if I send enough mailers to your mailbox, it's going to work. When he gets the name Walker Law, he gets it because he knocked on doors and connected with people. We need to motivate the 500,000 more Democrats that we have in this state to want to come to our message, but we have to do that understanding what our principles are. Thank you.
Stephen, we have a list of questions there or topics that we would like your introduction of yourself to address if you have that in front of you. So we'll give you an opportunity to tell people who you are and why you're doing this.
Good. Thanks so much. My sincere apologies for being late. It's my first one late. It's because I came from another meeting in advance. I'm Stephen Battelle. I was born in Miami-Dade County, Florida, in our public hospital. Went to public school there my whole life. My first act of activism, I stuffed envelopes on the McGovern campaign. George McGovern, who was born on the same date I was so liberal he only won Massachusetts. That was the sole state.
Couldn't help that.
At the age of 17, I organized an event to show solidarity with the United Farm Workers. We had 370 youth in Miami do a 24-hour fast. We had a surprise guest at the end when Cesar Chavez, the legendary leader, and his wife showed up to break the fast with us. I went away to college in the Northeast. I left in my junior year to be paid staff on the Carter campaign. Went back somehow, passed my exams, went back on the inaugural committee. After college, I was nominated for a Rhodes, a Marshall, and a Watson scholarship, meaning I played a sport and was a real nerd and was a great student. And I took the Watson. In that year, I met the woman that will be my wife for 36 years in March. My wife is a public school teacher and a longtime union member. And 2 of our 3 adult kids served in the Peace Corps. I have a lifetime and a family commitment for multiple generations of progressive activism. And that won't end no matter what happens in this election. I am a business executive in the real estate industry, and I am the only candidate for this race that has run organizations of large size in areas larger than the geography of this state year after year for the past 25 years. I have said because of that career, I started that business while I was my second year of law school out of my house. I've been successful beyond my wildest dreams. And because of that, I'm also the only candidate in the race that says, I will take no salary and I will take no expense reimbursements from the party. That doesn't make me more qualified. It makes me be able to immediately have more resources available in our party from the day we start. I never dreamed I would run for anything. All the other candidates, I like each and every one of them, and they have great qualities. They're not waving to me.
That's the time.
I thought you liked
You
what I
didn't
was
know that.
saying.
I know you didn't know that.
She waves at all of us. Don't get full of yourself. She waves at all. And me more than everybody else.
I've never run for office. They all have. I'm never running for anything else. This is a 4-year deal, and I won't run for re-election. And this is not a stepping stone for another job. My motivation is people started calling me and asking me to do this. The Friday after the election it started, and it kept going. By midweek, I said maybe if a path could be created, I could do it. And a path was created. I was elected committee man by a margin of over 60% over my other candidate, my friend Dwight. And here I am. My first action, if elected, will be number 1, we will start the charter for reform process all over again. Not just for the state charter, but for the DEC charters. The last 5 chairs have been elected by this awful, complicated process. That must end. It's designed by people in power to preserve their power. It's voter suppression. It's got to end. We need to bring in more candidates and more voters.
All right, we're gonna go on with some questions now. We understand you had some time to make up there, so that's
Thank you.
I'm going to sit now, and I'm going to bring Randy Sathan up. As I said, Randy is our precinct development coordinator, and in general, her topic is going to be working with the local county DECs and helping us develop.
Sure.
We'll do 2 minutes for the person that receives the question, and who is the first person? That will be Alan. I think that's where we are. And then 1 minute for each person to respond. We're getting short on time now. So.
Merging 2 questions together. So the first thing I have to do is just say, in our county, we only have 31% of Democrats. I believe that's almost the same as Sarasota, so kind of the same. And you have all mentioned county DECs. What would be your plan, if you have one, to reach out to all the counties? And I'm more concerned with our county and how your plans would differ from our county with only 31% Democrats to a county that's completely blue. And I'm gonna merge another question into that. The plan, if you have one, for improving the knowledge and ability for each of the precinct coordinators to reach out to members of the community, to be precinct captains, and to become more involved.
Again, I published a plan in 2010 and 2012. If you see me, I'll give you links to it. You can download and see it. Part of that approach is exactly what you do, specifically with Manatee County. There is a tremendous growth opportunity here. There is large portions of this population of Manatee County that have been neglected by all political parties. And I think that to be able to, I'll reach out and communicate with these folks, to talk to them about our party, convince them that we are the ones that represent them, and have, you know what the demographics are here. A lot of working people, second generation Americans. It is ripe for opportunity. Training. As the Florida Democratic Party chair, as an air traffic controller, as a union organizer, training was critically important. As a chair, we'll put together a cadre of instructors that you don't have to go to them, we're gonna come to you. We're gonna teach people how to, one, be a treasurer of a DEC, how to register voters, training. If you train people, they'll stay engaged. The other thing I'm gonna do, because I keep looking back here, young people, I'm absolutely committed in counties like this, in counties all over the state of Florida, to whatever we do, bringing in younger voters into this party, because if we don't, we are going to wither on the vine and die. I am absolutely committed with whatever structural reforms we put together, that we are going to bring in a diverse group of folks that's more reflective of what the state of Florida actually looks like, and younger people. Because that is what's going to energize this party and be able to send our message out to Democrats and win elections. Because ultimately it doesn't matter what we do if we don't win. And I will shut up with that and get some back of my time back. For all the other time I've taken.
Yes. I'm from a purple county, but I'm from the reddest red part of a very big purple county. And in areas where it's predominantly Republican, the key is focusing on developing people's trust, as I've talked to you about before, on issues that aren't partisan. That's how you start to grow that base. That's critical. And you also, Jacksonville, all of our elections are partisan, but you guys can be stealthy, right? And so part of this is also running people for soil and water, hospital board, mosquito board, things where, again, not in the blue zone or the red zone, just issues about improving the quality of life in your community. That's an important way to grow your base in counties like that. I'm absolutely passionate about training. When I rechartered our local Democratic Women's Club, we took it from a mission of fashion shows and teas to training and developing women who wanted to become active in the Democratic Party but didn't feel comfortable in our DEC at the time. And that is an amazing opportunity to really see what people's needs are and meet them. Part of my plan as FDP Chair is to us all to work together for a strategic plan and identify all areas of needs on a county-by-county basis, and from that we'll determine training needs. And I concur with Alan about the circuit rider, where they're going to come to you, but augmented with web resources. Thank you.
Stephen, we'll let you go next.
The best way to change what a county looks like is to register voters. Leah's performance in Osceola County was great. Part of that performance was an outside group that I was a part of, spent an enormous sum of money registering over 100,000 new Puerto Rican residents that had moved there. We changed what a county looks like. We changed Democratic performance. And we need that kind of voter registration statewide. The Republican Party chair, who's up for election and likely to get reelected next weekend, the same time that our elections are, has already said his top agenda is to eliminate the Democratic Party's longtime voter registration advantage statewide. We can't let it happen. We need to register 1 million new voters in Florida. And when we hit 1 million, we need to go for more. And it starts in red counties. But the reality is we win by expanding our margin of victory in blue counties and losing by less in red counties. The ability to invest in city and county and school board and sheriff and whatever races are, as we start creating voter excitement, because each of those candidates will bring their own sphere of family and friends into the race. Those voters will show up, and instead of constantly, as has been said, the top of the ticket dragging the bottom over, all of a sudden the bottom of the ticket will push the top over the goal line. Changing performance of counties is all about voter registration and all about the grassroots. We need to invest in our small counties. Some of our mid-sized counties, we need to teach them how to raise money to do it themselves. And our large counties ought to be able to do it themselves.
So in my most immediate work experience, I had the distinction of being the only Democrat in the Southwest Florida delegation. So I know all too well the challenges of the coast. And what I mean by that included Charlotte, Hendry, Glades, Collier, as well as Hendry. I mentioned Hendry before, but and Lee County as well. But what I found in traveling to those places is there's great potential. There's great potential for immediate change, but we have to get past the defeatist attitude that because you're a red county, you're technically irrelevant in the grand democratic scheme of things. The reality is we need to organize those counties, but organize them through the DEC is understanding that it's not a sprint, it's a marathon, folks. We have to build out the capacity in these counties to ultimately change. And when you look at some of the demographic shifts in those areas, there's going to be substantial change in some of these counties in the next 5, 10, 15 years. But understanding that we want to elect Democrats in perpetuity. We're not just here because we want to see the next president in 2020. We want to see Democrats elected up and down the ballot because there's a fundamental paradigm shift that has to happen in this place. So organizing and funding it through the FDP, but through the DECs, understanding what your needs are is critically important.
How will I help the DECs as chair, which is the reason I'm running, receiving no help from the state party? We have got to, this is our strength. You are experts on the ground. You know your county, you know your voters. And we should be asking you how to help you and what you need, what resources you need, what experts you need, what polling data you need that will help you win your races. And part of that I've also found a big key is in these counties where we need to swing that percentage is not only focusing solely on the DECs, but our clubs and caucuses, because that'll bring a larger vote. And because a lot of members, a lot of Democrats will connect more with a particular issue or a particular identity, and that can bring them into the Democratic Party as a whole through those resources. So in our DEC, our clubs and caucuses get an equal share at the table as well as the DEC. And one of the things that I found when we first started talking about running this and talking about the annual budget is about $2.5 to $3 million for the FDP during non-election time. And think about it, what could we do with that money? And it never gets down to where it needs to be, which is the DECs. For just about $1.6 million, the FDP could write a check to every DEC across the state between $15,000 and $25,000. Imagine what you could do with that money in your hands. How many races you could win versus $500,000 to one candidate in one area in our state. So that's what I would like to do.
You brought up part of my next question. I'm also gonna put two together here. As everybody knows, that progressives and millennials are concerned that their voices were not heard in this past election, and they're afraid that their voices still will not be heard from this point forward. So my question is, do you have a plan to reach out specifically to progressives, millennials, young people, to include them in memberships and leadership roles in the chartered clubs and caucuses? And what do you feel, what are your views on the expansion and benefits of the state caucuses?
That's for me first, right?
Yep.
Yes. Okay. In my introduction, I talked about healing. That is the biggest concern that our progressives and millennials have with how this last election just played out. Is they felt disrespected, not heard, and you know what? They're not wrong. And I say that standing here as a Hillary person. It's not the way I conducted myself through this election, and it wasn't the way I conducted myself on the floor at the Democratic National Convention. And it is the most pressing need that we have to deal with immediately as after this election. And I think that I'm the right messenger for that. I think because, and if you have talked with anybody on the folks helping me on my campaign for FDP Chair, the majority of them are under age 35, and the majority of them actually supported Senator Sanders in this campaign. And they are supporting me because they feel I am sincere and not just talk the talk, but walk the walk for this last election. So in reaching out to young people and to progressives, the messenger is important. There's no getting away from that. How I would want to include them is, I talked earlier about affirmative action goals for the state committee and membership, and that includes youth. Just as we have youth as affirmative action goals for youth and our delegates to the Democratic National Convention, we should have that on our state committee. How I envision that is we have our state committee elections in our counties as usual. We do an analysis of how far we are from our affirmative action goals, and we go to our clubs and caucuses and actually ask them for at-large appointments, just like we do with our delegates to the DNC, to fill those gaps. That's liable to mean that there's going to be a lot of young people that will become to the state committee through that kind of process. The only way for young people and progressives to be included, to feel included, is to change so that authority does come from the entire state committee up rather than bottom down. And the only way we can do that is to make sure that everybody is at the table. Thanks.
Thank you. The answer to your question is, do I intend to include youth in every committee? Yes. That's a simple answer. The real answer is, in the body of work that's my life, I've been engaging in youth outreach from the start. I'm on the board of Teach for America in Miami. We bring in 150 new teachers, college graduates every year, to teach in our inner cities. In the poorest schools, where 90 to 100% are on free or subsidized lunch. I mentor a group of a dozen of them every year. I was the first mentor group. We have 18 of them now in Miami. Those kids are nationally, they commit to stay 2 years. The national average is 2.5. In Miami, we're at 4 years. We're that way because we engage them. They are all over our DEC. We have New Leaders Council where we teach them how to enter public service. They visit my office as a group every year. I mentor that group. Lots of them have gone on to run for office and work in campaigns. And finally, in our office building, the entire third floor was the Obama campaign in 08. Over 110 people worked there. They live at my house. Oliva Lopez, who ran field in 2008, just sent me a Christmas card saying, your family was the most meaningful part of my Obama adventure for 8.5 years. That's the lifeblood. There are hundreds of young people. There have been 2 marriages of people met there. There are 4 kids that have come out of those things. That's how we build youth involvement. We engage them and we have them at the table with us.
So I'll answer the second question first. I think the clubs and caucuses represent really a frontline entry point for youth development. The reality is that a lot of young people, and I say this having not hit 40 yet myself, but still, a lot of young people, I know that, a lot of young people feel as though issues are their primary driving notion, right? And our clubs and caucuses represent that. When you're talking about the environmental caucus, or the Black caucus, or the Hispanic caucus, or LGBTQ, these are the entryway in which we cultivate real development amongst our youth, because a lot of their stuff is issue driven. But let's be clear, and going back to the notion of reaching outside, there's probably no city more democratic, quote unquote, than Chicago. And we all saw the tragedy of the Chicago video. But what I was hearing back from folks was that it's interesting that this one video is supposed to be this uniting factor in making Chicago better. when the city had 762 people murdered this year. So the other side of that is you have an entire group of folks, mostly young, feeling detached from a democratic city because they were patently ignored when their friends, neighbors, relatives, brothers, and sisters were being killed. That's indicative of the level of obtuseness, unfortunately, of the Democratic Party, Florida included, is that we're not tackling the issues that are most ravenous and inclusive of these folks. College tuition affordability, the notion of health care, increasing the minimum wage. Where were we on these fights? But more importantly, where was the FDP? As your chair, that's my goal, to be at the front.
How to involve the young and progressives specifically? Well, I could tell you that under my tenure as DEC chair, we grew from just 2 clubs and caucuses, one of Hispanic caucus and one of what was called Democrats of Celebration, which was one end of our county. We now have also the Democratic Women's Club. We have the American Muslim Democratic Caucus, and we have the LGBTA caucus. And so bringing those clubs in expanded our reach phenomenally. But progressives specifically, the drive down here, which took us about an hour and a half or so, I rode with 3 of my good friends and new members to our DEC, the young kids, as I call them, because I mother them all. But they're strong, they are opinionated, they are willing to do the work, and they're extremely progressive, and I was able to win them over, and I take great pride in that. And they hold my feet to the fire, and I'm proud of them for that. And I think that we can expand throughout the state. Thank you.
If it gets any colder outside, I need somebody to hold my feet to the fire. I'm a Florida guy. Well, one, everybody, of course, what you hear all the time is, people are asking or running for office or seeking positions. And anybody can tell you what what you want to hear right before. You have to look at what people have done in their life, of their achievement. I've had a lifetime commitment to mentoring and looking, bringing up the next generation. I find it's a passion of mine of understanding that we owe it to the next group of individuals that are going to become leaders in our society and so they can mentor other folks. In air traffic control, when I was a manager, I managed the Sarasota-Bradenton operation, by the way. I was the air traffic manager of that entire operation. I was also an operations manager at Tampa International. I was known as the supervisor of the team, the manager that recruited young people, sought out training for them to get them competitive so that they could get promotions. I sought out individuals that were not represented in our workforce, our young Hispanic and Black children that and would go to high schools and talk to them about air traffic control and get them excited about careers and opportunities. And then when we were hired and got them to the teams, again, I would seek out opportunities for them to be exposed to. That was it. Oh my gosh! I have got to be able to shorten my message. But again, it is one of the driving things. I absolutely, as I said earlier, we've got to get younger people involved. It's been a passion. I'll talk a little bit more about my outreach in the last campaign as well.
All right, last one up.
I will say this is our Vice Chair, Eleuterio Salazar Jr., and as I mentioned before, he is a past and future candidate. Yay.
So these questions, as Cheryl mentioned, surround candidacy issues, and they are very important to me because I just came off of a campaign trail. So although we did not win, we did a really great job. So we're pretty proud of the work we did. So the first question is, how will you work in detail with local DECs to identify candidates? And
I went first last time.
Stephen. Thank you.
2 minutes.
Oh, that's fast. I've been doing candidate recruitment in my community forever. In Coral Gables, I recruited, it's in its 91st year of existence. I don't live there. I recruited the first Democratic candidate, the second one. We just recruited the third one. We will turn that commission in a nonpartisan race for the first time Democratic in 91 years. I recruited Debbie McCarcel-Powell in the state Senate race in South Florida. I've been doing it forever, hand in glove with Ruth's List and with the Florida Alliance and with Senate Victory. They come to me all the time. And candidate recruitment's got to be essential, and we need to train them to talk to voters, talk to the media, talk to donors. Candidates from around Florida come to my office to sit at my desk, and I teach them how to raise money. I make the call, and they make the call, and then make the call from my phone so donors think that it's me calling and they answer the phone. I did it with Gwen Graham repeatedly during her successful House race. I did it with Jose Javier Rodriguez in his second House race as well. Candidate recruit, we got to train them. The answer is we send you out to do battle without the tools to succeed. That changes under my chairmanship.
I have the luxury of having been a candidate and held office. I think that's very telling in the sense that when someone comes to me, I can give them a broad-based perspective on what it's like to both run, win, and lose, and bounce back. All those things are absolutely necessary tools for any great candidate. That being said, I'm probably the only one here who had to sit in a meeting with then House Victory when they told us what the atypical candidate looks like in a district. When someone tells you that the best candidate for us right now is a white female school board member, and they're that kind of amorphic in their discussion around the best candidate, that lets you know how the top-down notion of the FDP has worked and has failed over the past several years. And so what I would say to you is that, again, working with the local DECs is going to be critically important, but we have to have a real-life, real-time discussion about not just nominating your friend because they're your friend. If there's someone in your community that's made a substantial impact, if there's a teacher of the year, if there's someone who's opened a small business that everyone knows, that in essence represents a substantial candidate, because guess what? They have multiple means of impact throughout the community. It just can't be like, I feel good about this person, because at the end of the day, as I mentioned before, it's going to boil down to who gets the most votes. And the person with the greatest network, even if they don't have the greatest resources, is oftentimes the best candidate.
Candidate recruitment. When I decided to run for my local school board, I reached out to the party, to everyone I thought that could help, and it was too early, that'll come later, and all of the things like that. So it started out with me and my husband sitting at our laptop, Google how to run a political campaign. And then we found Ruth's List and Emily's List, and they were the first ones that was over a year out from the election cycle that was giving classes. And so I traveled halfway across the state to attend those classes and learned a remarkable amount of information. And so I think that's been one of the failings of the FDP. That needs to be a continuous cycle, because you do have to set up 12 months, 18 months ahead of the cycle to prepare your candidates. So if we're only doing it during the election year, these people have already filed. And so what could they, I mean, they're past your classes, so it doesn't help. That's part of the part that I want to bring, which is the regional offices that we've all spoken so much about. We've got to be there, close to you, easy reach, with instant phone calls within an hour. I could be there at tonight's meeting, I could be there in the morning, not an overnight stay somewhere away, and then even if you get that phone call returned. It's got to be continual. It's got to be there, like I said, for all types of, all the aspects of campaigning, and the experts need to be there where the candidates are. And that's how you reach out. That's how you start. You've got to build it from the bottom up. You've got to be where the fight is.
It's not, again, it's, look at what someone has done. I've actively been involved in candidate recruitment for as long as I can recall. Most recently, we just enjoyed a huge success in Hillsborough County with the candidate I helped recruit, Andrew Warren, for state. We unseated a 16-year state attorney, and I was myself and one person together, we recruited him. And it was a huge success and one of the big shining examples in Florida of what we can actually do. Leah hit exactly on part of the training process. Again, I'm going to have a cadre of instructors. We're going to bring them out. There are almost 5 million Democrats that live in the state. There's a lot of potential candidates, not just this, as Senator Bowler just described, not just, and I've been in those meetings, he hit it dead on of their analytics and what they'll tell you. I say that we need to reach out into our community, we need to provide the instruction and turn people on to the possibilities. We can do that through, as we talked about yesterday, we were able to address the Black Caucus in Orlando. And we talked a lot about using the media, black media or Hispanic media, to put in these advertisements to say, you know what, we're going to have candidate training in Manatee County and downtown Bradenton on this Saturday and Sunday. Show up here and we'll teach you how to be a candidate. And that's how we're going to get people involved. That's all I have.
We have a lot of agreement on this subject because it's not exactly rocket science. But the best candidates are people who are already fully engaged in their communities. And training resources do need to be there ahead of time, because I've seen many, many fine candidates make the mistake of deciding to run the week of qualifying. It is just too late then. And part of the problem that the party's been having for a long time is we've been in this kind of siege mentality, that we only think about the very next election that's at the end of our nose. We need to start planning longer term. We have to. Because really, there are a lot of people that are interested in running for office that maybe aren't ready in this cycle. Politics is timing, but we do need to invest training in them and also mentor them, right? Tell them, you know what? You have the passion, you have the fire, but you need to be involved in these organizations in your community to develop your networks. You need to seek appointment to a local board or commission to elevate your position in the community and give you some real life experience in governance. You need to find an issue that you're passionate about, that you can help make a change, that you can point to as a success. So mentorship is another thing that we need to invest in to help get our people ready to run for office. And we need to also be realistic with people that they shouldn't run for governor as their first job, perhaps. You know, maybe city commission, maybe school board. That might be a good first thing for somebody. So, thank you.
All right, you guys answered one of the other questions within that question. Thank you. You guys did that really well. This one actually is really, really, really important because it really touched us here at home in Manatee, and I'd really like to hear from you guys where you see this going. During the next presidential campaign, how do you see the national campaign working with local candidates? What's your plan, if any, to send that message down? How does that send down?
Absolutely. So we decided kind of tongue-in-cheek decided the campaign that we're running is called a paradigm shift, right? And for those of you who understand the nature of a paradigm shift, it's not only just changing the operational style of what you're trying to change, but it's the thought that you all bring to the process, right? So what do I mean by that as it pertains to the question? It's very simple, relatively speaking, is that we have to sow a different seed within the Democratic Party so that national campaigns know that we are effective. What we've seen over the last 3 presidential cycles is that the presidential candidates assumed, and their campaigns assumed, that Florida was so dysfunctional post-2000 that there's no reason for us to go through the FDP or go through the local DECs because Florida can't run campaigns. But if we all of a sudden become centered, principled, idealistic about what a Florida Democrat is and what a Florida Democrat looks like and what those issues are, we now redefine those candidacies moving forward. It becomes essential. So that is part of this notion and concept of a paradigm shift. But I will add a personal note. There's a guy around here by the name of Bill Galvano, right? Who's been the dark hand that's been pushing a lot of leadership, and I can tell you about $500,000 dumped into a campaign against me. I know all too well the nefarious tactics of the Republican Party, especially in areas like Manatee. And what I mean by, going back to a previous question, the concept of organizing you all, even though you feel as though you're left out of the process, becomes so essential to a national campaign. Because the difference maker is going to be Sarasota, Manatee, Glades, Hendry, and that concentration of votes, even in a county where you're outnumbered. So I think it's essential for you all to understand, again, part of that paradigm shift concept, that we can't be the lovable losers in the red county. We have to believe in our heart of hearts that the votes we cast, both in gubernatorial and presidential races, are going to be so essential in making a difference and changing the dynamic in this state. So that's critically important.
Okay. Well, I wrote down the DNC to local candidates. And I thought, there's a connection? Because I've never seen one.
Well, I'm glad we did that.
Because, I mean, like I said, we are a blue county. We are a very successful blue county. We only have 2 elected Republicans in our county. And yet, the national candidates, I mean, they came and used our wonderful big Silver Spurs Arena for their big events, but they swooped in and they swooped out. I got a phone call, oh, by the way, if your people are free, here's some tickets, that kind of thing. But then, when it came time for the election, they came in less than 60 days out, asked us to pull our people from all of their campaigns they're working on to go phone bank for Hillary. And I said, and then they came to my meeting and yelled at us for not being there. And I said, I'm sorry, but we're busy electing completely down the ticket. And that's going to affect us more so than anything else. And then there's that audacity or arrogance, even if you will, that they were running a 6 to 7 county state. They didn't care about us, and look how that cost them. We brought out the early vote. They were convinced those numbers were hers. Florida was going to be the blue state that kept Trump out of the White House. But on election day, what happened? All of those neglected small counties came out, turned out, they voted, and now we're where we are. So, again, I couldn't get a Hillary sign in my county. And people begging, how do I get a sign? How do I get a sign? And they weren't even sending materials to us. So, again, we've got to focus. The FDP needs to know that our experts are on the ground in the counties. And if you want to get your national candidates and your Senate candidates elected, you need to come talk to us. You need to get us behind you, because that's where the win is going to come from.
Okay, so I want to keep it a little bit real. And this is from my heart, and maybe it doesn't echo with some of the applause. But you control what you can control. And what we control as grassroots people, remember I'm the grassroots guy, and if we're going to turn this party upside down and have a long-range goal of actually turning this party around, we need to pay a lot more attention to who's elected to our city councils and our county commissions and our school board races. Then we're worried about all these things that we cannot control. And the folks that come into rooms like this is what we can do. We can build a bench. We can turn these counties around. If you think that if you think that we put all of our energy and effort of what's happening up there, we're going to repeat cycle after cycle, failure after failure. We are never going to sustain a Democratic majority at the top if we're standing on the shoulders of a sea of Republicans. And it's not rocket science. This is how those crazy people on the right took over the Republican Party. Starting back in the 1970s, they started targeting school board seats and city council seats. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. We just have to do it better than they did. So what I would urge everybody to think about, especially as we're going in now, we just finished a presidential election cycle. There's municipal elections, and there's county elections, there's state house. Look what's happened in our state. We have got to take the state of Florida back. We got to start working harder in this legislature. And there are seats. There was how many Senate seats could we have picked up this time if we had run a better campaign? And you know what? Those Senate seats and our city council seats would have made a bigger impact on the lives of the people that live in our community and in our states than most everything else that we're talking about. So as a grassroots activist, that's what we need to do. Let's focus local, and then we'll fix the national.
What he said. Seriously, y'all.
Thank you.
Seriously, y'all. We have to stay focused on what is closest to us, because that's what we can change. And what Dwight said, in terms of part of the reason why that national campaigns don't really want to cooperate with us is they think we're incompetent. It's inescapable. And so, as a DEC, you have to deal with what's around you, what you can affect most. And frankly, it doesn't it drive you crazy that turnout in presidential years is like between 75 and 78%, and turnout in your local elections is probably more like 35%. And this is what affects people's quality of life the most. This is the work that you can do. No matter how great the FDP becomes, ultimately, it's going to be up to that national candidate whether they're going to play in a sandbox with us. It's not going to change anytime soon, no matter who you elect and no matter who we nominate. Some people want to run independent campaigns. And, you know, some of our gubernatorial candidates feel the same way. I spoke to one on the phone this week, and that person said when they get in this race, they're going to run a parallel structure, and was quite honest with me about why. But that kind of thing doesn't discourage me, because I know the passion that's in this room and lots of other rooms across the state to make changes that you can. And in a bright red county, it's all about that margin of victory. And that's something that you can change. And as FDP Chair, I'm going to work with you to figure out what those metrics are, what those opportunities are that you can focus on, and what resources you need to do that. Because that's how you're going to grow your DEC and develop a sustainable party here locally, is by those small victories. Thank you.
All of my colleagues have spoken eloquently, probably far more eloquently than I can, about what we need to do. One, the Florida Democratic Party, the DNC, and local DCs should never again give away their operations to a national campaign. Our business. Second, Leah mentioned the money. The FDP raises about $3 million a year. It's no surprise they don't invest in campaigns and DECs. They can't afford it. And everyone talks about all these wonderful things they want to do. And a 67 county strategy, well, guess what? With $3 million, it's not going to happen. They can promise you anything they want. $3 million, no more programming. That's why the state party never does it. I served as the DNC National Finance Chair for the last 15 months. I traveled to 27 states at my sole expense. I was a rescue operation. The 2 months before I got there, they had raised just under $1 million. The treasurer went to the chair distraught and said, "We need help." She said, "Who?" He said, "Battelle." She said, "He'll never do it." He said, "Ask." I already did. He said, "Yes." My first month, we did $6.5 million. We averaged over the next 10 months, $8.5 million, 3 over 10. I've been a fundraiser in Florida for years. Money alone is not going to win this. It takes money, and it takes an investment in the grassroots at heart. When we marry money and heart, we'll start winning elections. And we'll have strong local DCs and a strong party that can make the kind of investments that everyone's talking about. But it takes the resources to do it.
Stephen, will you marry me?
My wife of 36 years probably would have rejected it.
We've already gone about 10 minutes over what we had intended to go, but I'm still, just in the last few minutes, getting other questions. So I'm going to propose one thing, and we'll see if that works with everyone. I think we will forgo closing statements. I think we have come to know you, and you certainly are all, on both sides of the table here, welcome to stay after and talk with as many people as you can talk with and as many people as want to talk to you. So we'll forgo the closing one. And then I would like to briefly go through, one said, how do you get the chairs of the DECs more active in the FDP? And I think we can extrapolate some answers out of what you have already said. One said, how can we retake the state legislature and possibly the governorship? I think that's what we're working toward. So that's or one of the things we're working towards. So I think we can address that as well. One said, how will you do the nitty-gritty day-to-day work? I believe you are, you've talked about that, and I saw in that same Shale article, he said one of the chairs he worked with at the state party was too worried about keeping the lights on, and I noticed, we have some out, so I understand that totally. That is part of what is in my mind all the time. I know what our monthly expenses are, and are we going to be able to meet those? And that's not what I want to be dealing with. That's not what I want to be talking about. We do have a couple of interest group questions. Veterans, seniors, environmentalists. We talked a little bit about that there. Any comments that you want to make about any of those three groups or any other special interest? Is there a target that you would have for any of those that I've received questions on?
Well, I can be part of that, because again, it's something that's been my advocacy. I've actually been one of the founding members of many of these interest groups. I've been a great advocate for the Veterans Caucus and the foundation of that, because it's one of those issues that I've been outraged that the Republican Party has co-opted from us. And so, this is something that we all know our values, that, we stand for what the issues that are important to our men and women that have served this country and then returned home and are forgotten. So that's been something and just about every other caucus I've either been a part of, helped found, or I've been a promoter of. So yeah, absolutely. And I think everybody recognizes that this is our opportunity to expand community involvement and reach out to not just the few folks that listen to committee reports at DEC meetings, but touch issues that are important to them.
I think the way to give voice to every group is to build permanent, progressive, precinct-based infrastructure in every corner of the state. And when we do that, we engage everyone. My dad was a veteran. I get it. My niece is disabled. I get it. That's been my life. If we build permanent infrastructure that goes beyond a 4-year term, we will have lots of elections to celebrate. And if we don't, and if we continue under-resource our parties and our DCs, we will continue to have exactly what we've had. So if you join me in hoping for a better tomorrow and working hard to get it, we can build it.
Sort of piggybacking on a little bit of what Stephen mentioned, all of us are impacted by all these things. We have seniors, we have disabled, we have multiracial families, we have all these sort of concepts. And that's the thing that we need to understand, is that we need to get away from this notion of siloing folks into this particular narrative. And we saw it play out during the campaign, for instance, right? We automatically default to, Hispanics must be concerned only about immigration. Or blacks only concerned about criminal justice. And what do we end up doing? We end up marginalizing folks that are all going to be impacted by the downfall of the White House to Donald Trump now, right? So as Democrats, we need to be full on embracing all of the diversity within the party and understand that we are impacted on multiple levels with that diversity, and that it is a strength rather than a weakness. We need to stop running scared from those things that we feel are too volatile. I'll give you a prime example now, sit down, right? We currently have 2.5 million disenfranchised Floridians. 2.5 million. There are 13 states in the country that have a smaller population than the people that we have that can't vote in our own state. Yet when, in my DEC that I chaired, I contacted the national campaign and said, in Florida, Secretary Clinton needs to embrace the idea of the disenfranchised. Fell on deaf ears. Now these are folks that, once those rights were restored, in 2018, when we all vote to put that on the ballot and we all vote to pass that, are going to ultimately want to come where they feel welcomed and not where they feel refused. So I'm asking you, making a pitch, that we all have to wrap our heads around diversity being a good thing. We all like vegetable soup. It's got corn, carrots, squash, and everything else in it, and we all eat it. And we all think it's delicious. You might like it spicy, you might like it cold, you might like it hot, but at the end of the day, you like it. So if you like or you love the Democratic Party, you all need to take ownership of everybody that has the big D next to their name.
I agree. Obviously, we have so much common ground here. But I think it needs to be built into our structure because obviously a big part of this process for whoever that head chair is going to be restructuring of our bylaws. And if we build these types of inclusion into our bylaws, we can set that for beyond the 4 years and forward so that we're sure that clubs and caucuses and identity politics and all that comes to have that seat at the table and they know they're going to be heard. So we have a chance to really make that structure different moving forward for a long time.
Not everybody is cut out to be a precinct committee person. Not everybody has an interest to be a precinct committee person. Clubs and caucuses are a great way to get people involved in the party who, for whatever reason, are not suited to be PCPs. You know, the thing that's awesome about being a Democrat is that we are diverse. We have so many different interests. I don't know if y'all can hear the music from coming over there, but I think we need to form the Blues Democratic Caucus because that's some good sounding stuff. And also, clubs and caucuses are a really good outlet for when, very frankly, DECs become dysfunctional. I can tell you when I rechartered my Democratic Women's Club, it's when I just had the bickering in my own DEC up to here. And I was done. And it was interesting, I was talking to a leader from DWTF last week, and she was saying that she had looked at DECs that were really big and Democratic women's clubs were really big, and she found this really interesting trend line. Even in places that were bright red, Democratic women's club chapters that were very large were near DECs that were smaller. And so the clubs and caucuses play, for some people, that kind of outlet as a safe place. They're still Democrats, they still want to be involved. For whatever reason, the DEC's not working for them right now. For some people, it's an entry ramp to the DECs. So there's been some rules proposals to make them, that the clubs have to be under the authority of the DEC chair. I don't, just from my own personal experience, I would have some problems with that because, you know, sometimes, you know, Democrats, strong personalities, sometimes there's some personality clashes. We need to acknowledge and accept that happens in DECs from time to time. It's not something to, you know, it is what it is. And we need to give people outlets to be involved that speak to their highest interests. Because that's how you build a party and that's how you win elections.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask those of you who are state committee men and women who actually will be voting next week, if any of you have questions that we haven't touched upon yet, anything that is critical that you think we need to bring up? Yes?
I have a question. What is your, from each 5 of you, what is your continued financial sources that y'all are going to have day in and day out, month after month, if whoever gets picked here to be the FDP?
Yeah, I think it takes $30 million a year, and I think I can deliver it easily.
And that's the kind of answer we need now. So, not numerical, just brief.
Simply to build out small donor base. The reality is we need a pure, consistent investment in our DECs and our FDP of folks that will allow anyone to be FDP chair without having to worry about, you know, knowing the rich and famous.
I was with the small donor base, I believe $27 from most people guarantees you involvement and a vote, where $1,000 checks, $10,000 checks, $500,000 checks doesn't necessarily follow through with anything beyond that donation. And it's just, we've got to reach out to those small donors that truly want to be involved and bring their heart and soul into it. And actually telling you an exact number would be difficult because as many times as I've asked for a copy of the budget of our state party, I've been denied that, saying it's not public information. So.
Well, I can tell you factually, it takes a little over $2 million just to operate and pay the salaries and turn on the lights of the Democratic Party. I will also tell you that I would be proud to serve as trusted next Saturday as for Democratic Party chair. Everyone that you see at this table, I would be welcome on a leadership team. including as I've offered Mr. Patel down there to be my finance chair to help me raise that $30 million. But you know, I am also a fundraiser. I've been very successful. I was the #1 grassroots fundraiser for the presidential campaign in the southeastern United States a period of time when they had. I've raised money in campaigns, helped other folks raise money. Took a PAC from 200,000 a cycle to 2 million a cycle in 6 years. So I don't know if I could individually raise as much money as maybe one individual might, as the stable may, but what I will do is put together a team that can.
I think that we need to do our bylaws revision, our strategic planning, and then write our budget together. And that's how we figure out how much money we need, rather than working backwards. Number one. Number two, we do need to build our small donor program. We right now, there's a new program. It raises $200,000 a year out of 4,000 unique donors. A state this size, our small donor program should be much larger. Candidates have shown that it's possible to run campaigns on small donors. We need to use raising money, small donations as a training tool for people who want to be candidates, because raising money is a reality of being a candidate, and this is your way to see if you have what it takes. If you can keep on the phones to get through the yeses, get through the no's to get to the yes, okay? So that way those people then become part of our fundraising team. These are not the people who are going to make calls for $1,000 checks or $5,000 checks. But the fact is, it should be more than the FDP Chair's job to raise money for this party. The problem that we have is we're too dependent on large donations and frankly some corporate donations that tie our hands on message, and it should never be that way. Okay, the phony solar amendment, 78% of people in the state voted against it. We should have wrapped ourselves around that issue, but we were too busy and too worried about what some of our donors, who are power companies, were going to say about that. So we stayed away from that issue, and that's got to stop. I am an experienced fundraiser, certainly not on the level that Mr. Patel is, but when I became a candidate for public office, I didn't know for sure that I knew that I had what it takes to raise money. I raised a record amount of money for a non-incumbent in a district city council race in Jacksonville. I raised over $200,000 in a bright red district. It's a skill set, it takes discipline, it takes focus, and I know I have what it takes to raise money for the FDP.
As going into my second term as state committee woman, I felt my last term, I used to describe it as being an open ATM. You go to 3 or 4 meetings a year, you pay your hotel room, you pay your own food, and oftentimes you're asked to shell out $150 to $200+ for some fundraising dinner, and they throw a screen up and say, vote on it. What the hell am I voting on? Don't worry about it, just vote on it. How do you get the state committee people more involved so that they feel that they have a vested interest? And you've all said, yes, we've got to do it. But how would you do it? What is your proposal to do so?
I would say, if I may, I present the big, I understand the need for the big 5-star resorts and the fundraisers and the galas, and there's a place for that. But you don't tie your business that needs to come from your party to those kind of events. And that right there, making that, the committee meetings, the caucus meetings, everything removed from that atmosphere is going to be a big step toward that feeling of the ATM. This is the age of technology. We don't have to all be in the same room to get business done. It can get done at a more consistent level, a more active input throughout this. We can't all be in Tallahassee, and even Tallahassee isn't in the right spot. We all know that. So, and we need to bring, again, the party back to those doing the work instead of expecting you to go to the party, and especially to a party in a $350 a night hotel. That's just, we can't do that. We're Democrats.
But, I'll concede to you, sir.
Thank you, Senator.
No problem.
One, on that issue, I've actually had a plan since 2010. I actually re-summarized a plan for transparency in this party that I distributed to folks around the state. If you didn't get that, please see me or my friend that's in the back, Ian, to get us your email address, and I'll make sure you have a copy of it. Transparency. we have got to have transparency in this party. Accountability and transparency. Day one, as chair of the Florida Democratic Party, we're going to put together a team of people to look at everything that it means to be a Democratic Party and reinvent it. We're going to drive all these decision making in this party down as far as possible, and you are never going to show back up at a meeting to be a bobble-headed doll. We're going to have an opportunity for people to have a say in the party. There will be microphones in the room, and at least your voices will always be heard. So I assure you, day one, complete and total reorganization. You cannot look backwards at what this party is, because the party, after I'm chair in 6 months, is going to be radically different.
Very simply put, we've been doing business kind of the same way for a long time. And a lot of us feel very much bullied when we get the email notice that we're going to some Disney resort. It's going to cost us $259 per room and need to be there. And we feel a sense of, and it was crazy, it's indicative of the haves and have-nots, which is what our party isn't supposed to be about. We're not supposed to be creating this income inequality gap, right? So what I would propose is very simple, and this kind of speaks to youth engagement. We have 12 universities around this great state, most of which have hospitality venues at our disposal. Most of this time we're doing stuff in the summer. So whether you're staying at a Holiday Inn Express or you're staying at the Ritz-Carlton, the ability for us to then move into a central hub and conduct our meetings around, I don't know, things we're concerned about, like college affordability, right? Or infrastructure, economic development, at a place that is actually teaching all those things, at a place that reaches out to the future of Florida in terms of youth development. Imagine, if you will, you're at USF in Tampa, and you have kids during summer school, and they know that the Democratic Party is present, offering free workshops on things that they care about. Now you're growing your party in a very organic way, but more importantly, having done events at universities when I've chaired organizations, it's cost effective. You know, Florida State University is cost effective in comparison to Disney World. USF is cost effective in comparison to UCF, and all of them, again, have built phenomenal facilities, you know, iconic facilities at this point that are underutilized by the Democratic Party, even though we're paying good tax money to keep the lights on there too. So I think it's important for us to think outside the box about how we do events and not create this system of folks that feel pressured into spending, as you put it, hundreds, sometimes thousands of dollars in order to keep up with the Joneses.
Great idea to go to the universities, right? Leah, if you want the budget, turn to your left. Alan is the first vice chair of the party. The last 4 years, the second highest ranking officer. I'm sure he can get it for you. Second, we need, the reason they have it at these big places is that we need big meeting rooms. Universities are a great idea, but we need to go beyond that. Every time we book a place, we should book 3 other places that are limited service hotels that are lower cost. We should do what we do in campaigns. We should have people in our homes. I don't know who here hasn't had campaign people in their home. They're always in my house. They're in there this week. I think they prefer to come to see my dogs rather than me. But that's the solution. We need to treat each other like family and stay in each other's homes if they can't stay in the first hotel or the second hotel.
We've all talked about this issue a lot, so there's a lot of agreement on the table that all of these ideas are great. I've also included camping opportunities for people, obviously not in the summer meeting, but you know, as another alternative. Actually, sometimes when we are at Disney, people camp at Camp Wilderness there because it is pretty amazing. But I think the most important part of one's question was about the question of governance, and because I joined the state committee in 2013 after a special election. And I was so excited about my first meeting. It was, unfortunately, Weekend of Florida Blue, used to be called JJ. I had a family commitment that Saturday, so I decided I was going to fly down for the meeting. I called the staff. I was like, okay, I need the last couple sets of meeting minutes, and I need the agenda, so I'm prepared. I'm going to fly down that morning, just so you know, if something happens, I'm running a few minutes late, I am coming. And the staff's like, you're flying down just for the meeting? And I'm like, like, well, yeah, you know, I just ran for election, not everybody voted for me, and if I don't go to my first meeting, I'll never hear the end of it. So I'm gonna be there. And they're like, okay, but it's gonna be kind of a short meeting. First meeting, 15 minutes. Okay? There's no engagement. I mean, what people have said here about us being rubber stamps, bobble-headed dogs, potted plant is the example I get. So when I'm FDP chair, that won't happen anymore. Okay? Because I believe in being a servant leader, and that my job is to run the process. The members of the state committee here in this room, it's your job to develop the strategic plan and write the budget. I'm there to lead the process. I'm a former chair of Jacksonville's Planning Commission. We dealt with controversial issues, amendments to the comprehensive plan, PUDs, land use and zoning issues, millions of dollar decisions that affected people's homes and people's livelihoods. What I did is, after those hours of public testimony, we went into deliberation. I made sure every commissioner on that board asked their questions, spoke their piece before I spoke. Because as chair, to do anything else but speak last was to put my thumb on the scale. And we've seen too much of that thumb on the scale in the Florida Democratic Party, and it's got to stop, and it will stop with me.